Marcus smiled as he poured the wine himself. The bottle was expensive. I could tell by the way he cradled it like a newborn baby. "Only the best for our newest partner," he said, his voice warm and friendly like always. I accepted the ornate glass, feeling the weight of the crystal in my palm. This was supposed to be my moment. After 5 years of building this company from nothing, I was finally getting what I deserved. The $100 million milestone we hit last week meant everything would change. Being a wine lover, I naturally swirled the deep red liquid and brought it close to my nose. Something felt wrong immediately. The smell was off, not spoiled exactly, but different. Sharp. Chemical-like. My stomach twisted with unease. I brought the glass to my lips anyway. Maybe I was being paranoid. But the moment a single drop touched my tongue, every instinct in my body screamed danger. The taste was bitter, metallic, wrong in every possible way. Quietly, I set the glass down on the nearby table, trying not to make a scene. Maybe it was just a bad bottle. These things happen, right? But then I heard the crash behind me, and everything changed forever. The sound of shattering glass cut through the party chatter like a knife. I spun around to see Ella, Marcus's wife, collapsed on the floor. Her body was convulsing, foam bubbling from her lips. The glass in her hand, it was ornate, exactly like mine. My heart stopped. That was my glass, the one I'd set down moments before. "Call 911. I shouted, dropping to my knees beside Ella. My hands shook as I checked her pulse, weak, fading fast. "Someone help her." But when I looked up for Marcus, he was just standing there, frozen. His face was pale, his eyes wide with shock, but he wasn't moving, not even when the paramedics burst through the door. "Marcus?" I grabbed his arm and shook him hard. "You need to go with her." He blinked slowly, like he was waking up from a dream. The paramedics were already loading Ella onto a stretcher, working frantically to stabilize her. Marcus stumbled after them like a zombie. As the ambulance pulled away, I noticed something glinting on the floor. The broken glass. I knelt down and studied it carefully. Same ornate rim, same lipstick smudge where I'd barely sipped. Inside the remaining liquid, I could see faint white powder residue. I need to explain how we got here. 5 years ago, Marcus and I were just two dreamers in a tiny office above a coffee shop. I was his first hire, before the logo, before the fancy building, before any of this existed. It was my ideas that built this place. My code that made everything work, my sleepless nights that turned a crazy vision into reality. When other people doubted us, I was there, grinding away in the basement, making Marcus's dreams come true. I remember the day we hit our first $1 million in revenue. Marcus was so excited he could barely speak. "Allison," he said, "if we ever make it to $100 million, I'll make you a full partner. Equal ownership, equal control." He said it like it was impossible. Like we'd never actually reach that number. But I knew better. I could see the potential in what we were building. So I did something Marcus never expected. I called my lawyer and got it in writing. A signed agreement. Black ink on white paper. When the company hits $100 million in value, I become a 50% owner. Last week, we reached that milestone. Today was supposed to be the day Marcus honored our deal. Instead, I got a party and a poisoned glass of wine. I barely slept that night. My mind kept racing, replaying every moment from the party. The look on Marcus's face when Ella collapsed. The way he just stood there. The powder in the wine glass. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I tried calling Marcus, straight to voicemail. So I drove to the hospital myself. The sterile smell hit me as soon as I walked through the doors. I found him in the waiting room, slumped in a plastic chair. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair a mess. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "Marcus," I approached him carefully. "How is she?" He looked up at me with bloodshot eyes. For a moment, I thought he might break down completely. Then his face twisted with something I'd never seen before. Rage. "She's dead." His voice was barely a whisper. "Ella's gone." "Oh my God, Marcus, I'm so sorry." "Not Ella, not my love, not like this." "God, why?" He was talking to himself now, rocking back and forth. "She was everything to me." I reached out to comfort him, but he jerked away from my touch. "This is your fault," he snarled, jumping to his feet. Then he ran out of the hospital before I could say another word. I stood there in shock, trying to process what Marcus had just said. My fault? How could Ella's death possibly be my fault? I had nothing to do with whatever happened to her. I ran after him, but by the time I reached the parking lot, his car was already pulling away. I tried calling him again, voicemail. My hands were shaking as I drove home. Marcus's words kept echoing in my head. This is your fault. What did he mean? Why would he blame me for his wife's death? We'd been best friends for years. I was even his best man at their wedding, for crying out loud. When I pulled into my driveway, my blood ran cold. My front door was hanging open, the frame splintered around the lock. Someone had broken in. I didn't go inside. I'd seen enough crime shows to know better. Instead, I called the police from my car and waited for them to arrive. 2 officers showed up within minutes. We walked through the house together, checking every room. Nothing seemed to be missing. My jewelry was untouched. My laptop was still on the desk. Even my grandmother's antique ring was exactly where I'd left it. But then I noticed the empty frame on my office wall, the space where I'd hung my signed partnership agreement with Marcus. It was gone. I called Marcus again, and again, and again. Every call went straight to voicemail. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what was happening. That partnership agreement meant everything. It was proof that I owned half the company. Without it, I had nothing but my word against Marcus's. And after today, I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. Then I remembered something. My neighbors downstairs were paranoid about security. They had cameras everywhere, always complaining about suspicious people in the building. Maybe they caught something. I knocked on their door, trying to keep my voice steady. Hi, Mrs. Chen. I know this sounds crazy, but someone broke into my apartment. Could you check your security footage from this afternoon? She invited me in and we huddled around her computer screen. There it was, clear as day. Marcus, still wearing the same clothes from the hospital, walking up to my building. 20 minutes later, he came back down carrying a manila folder. My heart sank as the pieces finally clicked together. The partnership agreement, the promotion party, the poisoned wine. This wasn't random. This wasn't grief making Marcus act strange. He had planned this. The wine wasn't meant for Ella, it was meant for me. Marcus didn't want to share control of the company. He wanted to erase me completely. I stared at the security footage for a long time, my mind reeling. This couldn't be real. Marcus was my best friend. We'd built everything together. He was like a brother to me. But the evidence was right there on the screen. Marcus breaking into my apartment. Marcus stealing the only proof of our partnership deal. And now his wife was dead from poison that was supposed to kill me. I should call the police right now, show them the footage, tell them everything. But something held me back. What if I was wrong? What if there was another explanation? I needed more time to think. More evidence. I called my lawyer instead and told him everything that had happened. The broken agreement, the security footage, the poisoned wine. He listened without interrupting. Allison, he said finally, you need to be very careful. If what you're suggesting is true, you're in serious danger. I promised to keep him updated and hung up. That's when I saw the email notification on my phone. It was from HR. Dear Allison, you are hereby relieved of all duties pending an internal company review. You are not permitted to contact clients, staff, or enter company premises until further notice. My hand started shaking. Marcus was already making his move. The next morning, I drove to the office anyway. I had to try to talk to someone to explain what was really happening. But the security guard stopped me at the front entrance. Sorry, Miss Allison. Orders from the top. You're not allowed inside. But I need to speak with Marcus. There's been a misunderstanding. Can't help you. You'll need to take it up with HR. I stood outside the building I'd helped create, watching my former colleagues walk past me like I was invisible. Some of them whispered when they saw me. Others just looked away. By lunch, I started hearing the rumors. People were saying I'd been having an affair with Marcus, that I was jealous of Ella, that I'd somehow targeted her out of spite. The stories were getting wilder by the hour. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender was listed as Communications Department. When I opened it, my blood turned to ice. It was a draft press release. The headline read, Promotion Party Ends in Tragedy After Disgruntled Employee Poisons CEO's Wife. I read it twice, then 3 times. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. But there it was, in black and white, painting me as a jealous murderer who'd killed an innocent woman. My phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered to the sidewalk. I picked up my phone with trembling hands and read the press release again. Something jumped out at me this time, something that made my blood run cold. The document mentioned the specific type of poison that killed Ella. It even included technical details about how it worked. But that was impossible. The autopsy results hadn't been released yet. The police hadn't told anyone what kind of poison it was. Unless someone already knew exactly what had been used. I screenshot everything and immediately sent it to my lawyer. This was proof that Marcus had planned the whole thing. He'd written the press release before the autopsy was even finished because he knew what poison he'd used. My phone rang. It was my lawyer. Allison, this changes everything. If this press release was written before the autopsy results came out, it proves premeditation. You need to take this to the police immediately. But before I could respond, breaking news flashed across my screen. The autopsy results were finally public. The media was going crazy. Every news channel was covering the story of the tech executive's wife who'd been murdered with exotic poison. My picture was already showing up on social media. Comments were pouring in, calling me everything from homewrecker to psychopath. The court of public opinion had already decided I was guilty. The police called that afternoon. They wanted to question me. The next morning, I was getting ready to go to the police station when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus's name. My heart pounded as I quickly turned on my voice recorder app and answered. Hello? No greeting, no pleasantries. Just Marcus's voice, low and threatening. Don't make this worse than it already is. I opened my mouth to respond, to demand answers, to ask him why he was doing this to me. But before I could say a word, the line went dead. My hands were shaking as I immediately forwarded the recording to my lawyer. This was evidence, proof that Marcus was trying to intimidate me. 20 minutes later, my lawyer called back. I'm meeting you at the police station. Don't say anything without me there. The drive to the station felt like the longest trip of my life. Every red light, every slow car in front of me made my anxiety worse. I kept replaying Marcus's words. Don't make this worse than it already is. Worse for who? Him or me? When I arrived at the station, my lawyer was already waiting in the parking lot. He looked grim. Allison, I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there anything else you haven't told me? Anything at all? I shook my head. I've told you everything. He took a deep breath. Then let's go find out what they know. The interrogation room was exactly what you'd expect. Gray walls, fluorescent lights, and a metal table bolted to the floor. Detective Rodriguez sat across from me, her expression neutral but watchful. Tell me about the night Ella died, she said. I went through everything again. The wine tasting wrong, setting down the glass, finding Ella collapsed with my glass in her hand, the powder residue I'd seen, the security footage of Marcus breaking into my apartment. Detective Rodriguez took notes but didn't react much. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. That's quite a story, Allison, but here's what I'm struggling with. You're the only person who claims to have noticed anything wrong with the wine. No one else saw you switch glasses, and convenient that you have the only sample of the alleged poison. My lawyer squeezed my hand under the table. My client has been fully cooperative. She's provided evidence of the break-in, the stolen documents, and the threatening phone call, which could all be explained by grief and business disputes. The detective replied, Is there anyone else who can verify your version of events? I thought hard, but I already knew the answer. The party was crowded, but no one had been paying attention to me and the wine glasses. Everyone was focused on their own conversations. No, I admitted. No one else saw what happened. The detective's expression didn't change, but I could tell what she was thinking. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that partnership agreement. The original document that proved Marcus owed me half the company. Without it, I had nothing. But Marcus had made one mistake. He'd kept the original in his office safe, not destroyed it, and I still knew the combination. We'd used it together for years, my birthday followed by his. At 2 a.m., I made a decision that would either save me or destroy me completely. I drove to the office building. The security guard was asleep at his desk. I used my old key card. They hadn't deactivated it yet. The elevators moved silently through the empty building. Marcus's office looked the same as always. Family photos on the desk, awards on the walls, and behind his chair, the safe that held all our most important documents. My fingers trembled as I entered the code, 0815-0422. My birthday, then his. The safe clicked open. There it was, my partnership agreement, folded neatly in a manila folder, the same folder I'd seen Marcus carrying in the security footage. I took photos of every page, then closed the safe and got out of there as fast as possible. But when I got home and called my lawyer with the good news, he wasn't happy. "Allison, please tell me you didn't just break into the office of the man you're accusing of murder." I tried to explain to my lawyer that I hadn't broken in. I'd used my own key card. But he cut me off. "That doesn't matter. Your employment was suspended. You had no legal right to be in that building. And there's no way to prove that document was already in the safe. Marcus could claim you planted it there yourself." My heart sank. In trying to find evidence to clear my name, I'd probably just made everything worse. The pounding on my door came at dawn. Through the peephole, I could see police officers with an arrest warrant. "Allison Carter, you're under arrest for breaking and entering, and you're now the prime suspect in the murder of Ella Martinez." They rid me my rights as they put on the handcuffs. In the police car, I learned that Marcus had submitted security footage showing me entering the building after hours. To everyone else, it looked like I was tampering with evidence. At the precinct, they confiscated my phone. I watched helplessly as they scrolled through my photos of the partnership agreement. But instead of seeing evidence of Marcus's betrayal, they saw what looked like a vindictive woman obsessed with money and control. "Your client made a serious mistake," Detective Rodriguez told my lawyer. "Breaking into a crime scene doesn't make her look innocent." From my jail cell, I could see the news playing on a TV in the distance. My mugshot was already on every channel. The headlines were brutal. "Tech exec arrested in wife's murder." While I sat in jail, Marcus began his media tour. From my cell, I watched him on the evening news, looking perfectly composed and devastated at the same time. "Ella was the love of my life," he said, dabbing at his eyes with a tissue. "We'd been married for 8 years. She was everything to me." The reporter asked him about me, and Marcus's performance was flawless. "I thought I knew Allison. We built this company together. She was like family to me. But lately she'd been acting strange, possessive. She seemed to think she deserved more than what she'd earned." He paused, as if the next words were too painful to say. "I had no idea she harbored such feelings about our professional relationship, and to take it out on Ella." His voice broke convincingly. "Ella never hurt anyone in her life." The story was everywhere within hours. Social media exploded with theories and accusations. Justice for Ella started trending. Someone had already created a website called AllisonCarterIsGuilty.com. My lawyer posted bail the next day, but the damage was done. "Marcus is winning the court of public opinion," he warned me as we left the courthouse. "We need something big to turn this around." But what could we possibly find that would be bigger than a grieving widower's testimony? The answer came from an unexpected source. The updated autopsy report revealed that Ella had died from a rare variation of zolpidem, a specialized compound that wasn't available in regular pharmacies. My lawyer immediately started investigating where someone could get that specific poison. The trail led to a single compounding pharmacy across town, one that specialized in rare medications for research purposes. "This isn't something you can just buy online," my lawyer explained. "It requires a prescription from a licensed doctor, and there are only 3 pharmacies in the state that can make it." We subpoenaed the pharmacy records. Sure enough, someone had picked up that exact compound just 2 days before the party. The prescription was written under Marcus's name, but it had been stolen from a hospital doctor's prescription pad. The pharmacy's security footage was grainy, but clear enough to see a man in a baseball cap signing for the order. When they zoomed in on his face, my heart started racing. It was definitely Marcus. Same height, same build, same way of holding his shoulders. The signature was scribbled and hard to read, but handwriting experts would be able to match it to known samples. My lawyer immediately contacted the police with the new evidence. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe the truth would finally come out. The momentum began to shift quickly. Detective Rodriguez, the same officer who'd questioned me so skeptically, came to my apartment with a very different attitude. "If what we're seeing is true," she said quietly, "this is one of the cleanest sociopathic murders I've encountered. He was planning to kill you and make it look like an accident. When his wife died instead, he improvised and tried to frame you." The evidence was piling up: the stolen prescription, the security footage, the pre-written press release that mentioned details only the killer could know. Marcus's break-in to steal my partnership agreement. A new arrest warrant was issued that afternoon. This time, Marcus was the target. They found him at his country house, packing a suitcase. When the officers put him in handcuffs, his expression was eerily calm. Too calm for someone whose life was falling apart. "Marcus Martinez, you're under arrest for the murder of Ella Martinez and the attempted murder of Allison Carter." As they led him away, he looked directly into the news cameras. No tears this time, no broken voice, just cold, calculated stare. I watched the arrest live on television from my lawyer's office. After weeks of being painted as a monster, I finally felt like I could breathe again. But something about Marcus's expression bothered me. He didn't look like a man who'd been caught. He looked like someone who still had a plan. The search of Marcus's house uncovered the smoking gun we needed. Hidden in his home office, police found a personal laptop with deleted emails that changed everything. Computer forensics recovered dozens of draft documents that Marcus had written before the party. One was titled "Tragic Loss of Co-Founder." Another was "Executive Statement on Sudden Passing." The most chilling was a fake obituary for me, complete with details about my sudden illness. All of the documents were time-stamped 3 days before the promotion party. Marcus had been planning my murder for weeks, maybe longer. The emails were sent immediately to both my lawyer and the district attorney's office. Finally, we had proof of premeditation. This wasn't a crime of passion or a business dispute gone wrong. Marcus had coldly calculated how to kill me and steal the company we'd built together. There was even a draft will that supposedly left my shares of the company to Marcus in recognition of his mentorship and leadership. He'd thought of everything. The DA called a press conference that evening. Standing at the podium, she announced that all charges against me were being dropped. An arrest warrant for first-degree murder and attempted murder was being issued for Marcus Martinez. For the first time in weeks, I cried tears of relief instead of fear. The evidence against Marcus was overwhelming. The deleted emails painted a clear picture of his plan. He'd intended to poison me at the promotion party, making it look like I'd had a sudden medical emergency. With me dead and the partnership agreement stolen, he would have inherited full control of our company. The timeline was damning. 3 days before the party, he'd written my fake obituary. 2 days before, he'd stolen the prescription and obtained the poison. The day before, he'd drafted press releases announcing my tragic passing. But the most chilling document was a voice memo he'd recorded, apparently as insurance in case his plan went wrong. In it, Marcus calmly explained to the company staff that he was devastated by Allison's sudden death, but would honor her memory by continuing the work we'd started together. The prosecution played the recording in court. Hearing Marcus practice his fake grief was one of the most disturbing things I'd ever experienced. His voice was steady, rehearsed, completely emotionless as he planned to mourn the woman he was about to murder. My lawyer turned to me as the recording ended. "This seals it. No jury will believe this was anything other than premeditated murder." An official arrest warrant was issued within hours. Marcus Martinez was charged with first-degree murder of his wife and attempted murder of his business partner. Justice was finally coming. The news of Marcus's arrest sent shockwaves through our company and the entire tech industry. Staff members who'd believed his lies about me were suddenly questioning everything they thought they knew. Emergency board meetings were called as the scandal unfolded in real time. Stock prices tumbled as investors panicked about the company's future. Major clients started asking questions about their contracts. The chair of the board, Margaret Chen, called me personally that afternoon. "Allison, I know you've been through hell, but we need to talk. The company is in crisis. We need steady leadership to get through this." She asked to meet privately. away from lawyers and media attention. I agreed, curious about what the board was thinking. We met at a quiet restaurant outside the city. Margaret looked tired and stressed. "I'll get straight to the point," she said. "The board has reviewed the evidence. We believe you're innocent, and we're horrified by what Marcus tried to do. But more than that, we need to know, do you still have the original partnership agreement?" I nodded. Even though Marcus had stolen the framed copy, I'd kept digital backups and had given copies to my lawyer years ago. "Then we have a proposition for you," Margaret continued. "The board wants to honor that contract immediately." My heart started racing. After everything I'd been through, they were finally ready to make me a true partner. I presented all my evidence to the board the next day. The scanned photos from Marcus's safe, the notarized digital backups I'd kept, and email records from when the agreement was first signed. My lawyer had cross-verified everything with handwriting experts and timestamp analysis. The partnership contract was legitimate, legal, valid, and according to its terms, executable immediately upon the company reaching $100 million in value, which we'd done the week before the party. The board reviewed every document carefully. They brought in their own handwriting experts to confirm Marcus's signature. They verified the dates and witnesses. Everything checked out perfectly. Margaret stood up and addressed the room formally. "Based on our review of the evidence and the legal validity of this partnership agreement, the board votes unanimously to honor the contract signed by Marcus Martinez 5 years ago." She turned to me with something that almost looked like a smile. "Effective immediately, Allison Carter is named interim CEO and controlling partner of this company, pending the outcome of Mr. B. Martinez's trial." I signed the papers with shaking hands. After 5 years of building this company, after weeks of being accused of murder, I finally had what I'd earned. The company I'd helped create was finally mine. Marcus's trial began 3 months later. The courthouse was packed with reporters, former employees, and curious onlookers. I testified on the second day, telling my story calmly and clearly. I didn't embellish or dramatize anything. I just told the truth. The wine that tasted wrong, the glass that got switched, finding Ella collapsed, Marcus's strange behavior at the hospital, the break-in, the threatening phone call. The prosecutor walked me through each piece of evidence methodically. The pharmacy footage showing Marcus obtaining the poison, the deleted emails planning my death, the timeline that proved everything was premeditated. "And how do you feel about Mr. Martinez now?" the prosecutor asked. I looked across the courtroom at Marcus, sitting at the defense table in an expensive suit. He stared back at me with the same cold expression he'd worn when they arrested him. "I feel betrayed," I said honestly. "We were supposed to be partners, friends. I trusted him with my life, and he tried to take it." The defense attorney tried to paint me as a vengeful employee who'd fabricated evidence. But the facts spoke for themselves. The most damaging piece was the voice memo Marcus had recorded, a practice run for announcing my fake death. When the prosecutor played it for the jury, several people visibly reacted. The cold, calculated way Marcus rehearsed his fake grief was impossible to explain away. When Marcus took the stand in his own defense, I watched him carefully. He was still handsome, still charming, still able to project sincerity when he needed to. For a moment, I almost understood how he'd fooled everyone for so long. He denied everything, of course. The pharmacy footage was too grainy to be certain. The deleted emails were taken out of context. The voice memo was just him processing his grief in private. "Allison and I built something beautiful together," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I would never hurt her. I loved her like a sister." But under cross-examination, cracks began to show in his performance. The prosecutor pressed him about specific details, specific timestamps, specific lies he'd told. "Mr. Martinez, can you explain why you deleted internal company memos after the promotion party?" Marcus hesitated for the first time. I was protecting the company. I thought Allison might try to damage our reputation. Before you knew she was a suspect? I was just being cautious." "Cautious about what exactly?" Another pause, longer this time. I thought she could ruin everything we'd built." The jury shifted in their seats. The defense attorney looked panicked. Marcus had just admitted that he saw me as a threat to be eliminated. No further questions, the prosecutor said calmly. The damage was done. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned to the courtroom, the tension was suffocating. Marcus sat perfectly still, his lawyer whispering frantically in his ear. The foreperson stood up, holding a piece of paper that would determine Marcus's fate. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Ella Martinez, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. Reporters started typing furiously. Ella's family broke down in tears. On the charge of attempted murder of Allison Carter, we find the defendant guilty. On the charges of corporate fraud and obstruction of justice, we find the defendant guilty. Judge Patterson banged his gavel for order, then addressed Marcus directly. Mr. Martinez, you have been found guilty of the most heinous crimes. You murdered your own wife in a failed attempt to kill your business partner. You showed no remorse, no conscience, no humanity. I hereby sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the bailiffs moved to escort Marcus away, he turned to look at me one last time. His expression was completely blank, emotionless. Even now, facing life in prison, he showed no regret for what he'd done. This isn't over, he said quietly, his voice carrying across the silent courtroom. But for me, it finally was. With Marcus behind bars and the trial over, the board formally installed me as permanent CEO and majority owner of the company. The legal battles were finished. The media attention was dying down. I could finally focus on rebuilding what we'd lost. My first priority was restoring the culture Marcus had poisoned. I held all-hands meetings with every department, addressing the rumors and lies that had spread during the investigation. I apologized to employees who'd been caught in the middle of our conflict. Then I started making changes. Real changes. I implemented transparent promotion policies to prevent the kind of favoritism that had nearly destroyed us. I created an internal ethics hotline where employees could report problems without fear of retaliation. Most importantly, I started a foundation for women and minorities in tech who'd faced discrimination or abuse in the workplace. Too many talented people had been pushed out of companies by corrupt leadership. I wanted to give them a second chance. The transformation wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Within 6 months, our employee satisfaction scores had doubled. Within a year, we'd won several awards for workplace culture and innovation. Investors who'd fled during the scandal started coming back. New clients signed contracts. The company's value didn't just recover, it doubled. We'd built something better than before. Something honest. A year later, I stood in the same conference room where Marcus had poured me that poisoned wine. But everything was different now. The room was full of employees celebrating our biggest year ever. The atmosphere was light, joyful, genuine. I held up a glass of wine, the same vintage Marcus had used, but this time opened in front of everyone. No secrets, no hidden agendas, just celebration. A year ago, we almost lost everything, I said to the room. Not because of market forces or competition, but because trust was broken at the highest level. I looked around at the faces of people who'd stood by me through the worst period of my life. We learned that a company is only as strong as the values it actually lives by. Not the ones written on the wall, but the ones demonstrated every single day. I raised my glass higher. Tonight, we toast to truth, to resilience, to the courage to speak up when something's wrong, and to the people who refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice. The room erupted in applause. Someone started chanting my name, and soon everyone joined in. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt truly happy. I took a sip of the wine and smiled. And to never drinking from someone else's glass again. The room laughed, and I knew we were finally home.